55% of Gen Z and millennials say social media reviews are the top reason they try a restaurant, and 73% have visited a restaurant in the last 3 months because of one. Do you have timely reviews working for you? Quick-turn influencer review campaigns from Bell Communication can fill tables fast. Visit bellcommunication.com/influence to learn more.
Hey there, welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I'm Sam Oches, editor-in-chief here at NRN, and this is the show where I give you an all-access pass to the restaurant industry's most influential decision-makers. This week, I'm talking with Michael Meche, the president of Mooyah Burgers, Fries, and Shakes. Michael has 3 decades of experience in the restaurant industry, most of that with Papa John's, where he started as a store employee before working his way up to vice president of franchise operations. He then spent a few years at Capriotti's and Wing Zone before taking on his current role earlier this summer. Michael has a passion for operational excellence, particularly as it relates to franchisee success. And he's bringing that passion to Mooyah, the Dallas-based better burger brand with around 75 locations. He joined the podcast to talk about his philosophy on great operations, franchise growth, and how to turn a minimum wage job into a career that you can be passionate about. In this interview, you will learn more about why great operations are what help you beat the restaurant across the street, why you should equip your employees with lifelong skills, and why the most important thing that you can give your team is your time. Also, reminder that we're gearing up for an incredible Create, the event for emerging restaurateurs, this October 15th through 17th in Nashville. Our agenda features leaders from companies like Kava, Din Tai Fung, Dutch Bros, Insomnia Cookies, Salt and Straw, Lettuce Entertain You, and many, many others, not to mention a keynote chat and performance with the Bacon Brothers featuring none other than Kevin Bacon himself. If you are a founder or an executive of a restaurant chain with under 100 locations, this event is tailored specifically with you in mind. By the way, if you have more than 100 locations, I think you'll find plenty of value out of it as well. It's also free for restaurant operators to attend, so register at create.nrn.com today. Jumping now into my interview with Mooyah President Michael Meche. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview as I will share my 5 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, I'm sitting down with Michael Meche, the president of Mooyah. Michael, thanks for taking some time today.
Sam, good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right, excited to dig in because, Michael, you are new to Mooyah, but you are certainly not new to the restaurant industry. You have a remarkable career, a lot of experience behind you that you bring to Mooyah. We're going to get into that. Well, let's start there. I mean, because you just told me before we hit record, you started as a teenager at Papa John's. Tell me about your early days in the restaurant industry and getting involved in this crazy industry.
Yeah, I just graduated high school. It was 1993 and I needed a job. And, Papa John's was a regional company that had started growth into Texas. So I had no idea what Papa John's was, but needed some work. So I started there as basically a delivery driver and a shift leader. And then went into college. And by the time when I started in high school, we had probably about 400 restaurants. When I graduated from college 4.5 years later, we had 1,700. A lot happened in that 4.5 years. And so I didn't have a plan on working in restaurants. That wasn't the goal. Certainly, I could see that something special was going on there. And I already had 4.5 years invested, so I decided to stay with them, and that started a 30-year journey. That was a pretty cool partnership between me and them.
Yeah, what was it about the restaurant industry that did you stay because of the Papa John's of it, or was there something about the restaurant industry you saw potential in?
It's cliche, but it really was the people. I mean, when you work in the restaurant business, you spend a lot of time with the people there, and you have to work hard, and you have to work fast, and you have to work smart. And so over time, you develop really strong relationships. And so for me, I was just a shift leader, assistant manager, but Papa John's was growing so fast. By the time I got out of school, all of my full-time managers had become directors and area people and market leaders. And so just to kind of see that career path early on was super attractive to me. But fell in love with the business.
No, I've never been a part of scaling a restaurant chain. I've watched a lot of it. I know a lot of people have been a part of it. I imagine there must be something sort of addicting about that, being a part of something and winning kind of over and over and watching it grow.
Yeah, I mean, we were opening up a store a day, in our prime, and yeah, it goes so quick. You have to have process, but yeah, there's a rush about it. And when you're opening restaurants and training people and introducing new customers to the brand and doing ridiculous volumes, yeah, there's a lot about it that's super cool, super challenging too. But yeah, your hair being on fire is kind of a fun place to be.
Now, I know that, especially, we'll get up to your time now here at Mooyah, but I believe at Papa John's as well, a big part of your role has always been around franchisee relation, working with franchisees, operational efficiency. Tell me a little bit more about some of the specialties you've developed over the past 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, so to me, it starts with inside the four walls. So, I firmly believe that if you don't know how to do it, it's hard to support it. So we were always very, very operations driven. So we basically said you either make pizzas or you help people make pizzas. So that was always our core. So when I grew into supporting franchisees and picking franchisees, that was a lot of it. So a lot of it was, hey, let's not overthink this. I mean, the restaurant business is simple by nature, very, very hard to execute. So we never got bigger than the restaurant. So whether I was, running one or supporting at my height 3,900, we never got above one restaurant at a time. So with picking franchisees, it was always about picking people that kind of shared that vision, but they were also gritty. They understood they had to get in there. They had to work behind the counter. They had to learn to make pizzas. They had to know point of sale, soup to nuts from front to back. I mean, when you pick the right people with the right process, then really it just comes down to execution.
To that end, what do you think makes the perfect franchisee? Because obviously every company is going to look for kind of different traits, different attributes with their franchisees. But, I've talked to hundreds of franchisors over the years about what they look for in franchisees. To me, it seems like tends to be kind of the same type of person. What do you see as being those perfect traits of a great franchisee?
For me, you need more than just return on investment. So obviously that's why we're here. We're here to make money, but it's so much more than that. And so I've been fortunate to work for 4 brands. Papa John's, when I started, was very small. Capriotti's and Wings Zone, same. Mooyah emerging as well. To where when you're in it from the beginning, it's more than a brand to you. It's almost part of your soul. You start, there's legacy there, and there's developing people from drivers and insiders to running $1 million businesses and multiple restaurants. That's very rewarding. What I have found is the best franchisees are the ones that really understand it's about building a brand, because when the brand is doing well, everybody else is going to do well with it. So return's important, but really buying into what the brand is trying to do, that's what I've seen work over and over and over again. So that's what I'm looking for in a franchisee.
And I imagine just sort of that boots on the ground nature of working in the community, connecting with the customer, that must be so crucial. That's not something it's not for the faint of heart, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's beating the restaurant across the street. Mm-hmm. And so especially when you're a little bit smaller and you don't have the marketing budgets that some of the bigger chains have, it comes down to operations. And so you have to be the mayor of the town. And so, one of the first questions I ask a prospective franchisee is, hey, are you running it or who is? Because somebody has to wake up every single day putting themselves into the business and kind of owning it.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the franchise restaurants that succeed.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned Capriotti's and Wing Zone. You move on to those companies which are under the same roof, and tell me about then how you level up yourself as a professional during your time at that company.
Yeah. So I mean, the cool thing about me is 30 years at Papa John's, I wasn't looking for jobs when I found the next 2. So that part's been super interesting to me. I almost had to learn how to do that because I'd been in one place for so long and had institutional knowledge and loyalty. But to restart it has been so fun to really get down and, kind of go back in time and get to restart things, not make some of the mistakes we did at Papa John's, but ultimately it's very fundamentals based. For me, it comes down to, hey, do we have the food right? Are we selling a craveable, product? And then you get into the culture of the businesses. For me, I want to work with good humans. And so that's a non-negotiable for me. Who you surround yourself with is a big one. So when you kind of have the right product and the right people and the model works, the growth kind of happens organically. So fundamentally, that's what I'm looking for.
That's such an interesting thing that you say, though, too, about this fact that you weren't really looking for it. This opportunity just kind of came across. I had that earlier in my career where you spend so much time at one company. It's like you're so embedded in that you're not even thinking about what's ahead. But, you've obviously at Papa John's, to be a part of the growth from an emerging brand to a major national powerhouse, and then going to another emerging chain and helping it grow, and then coming to another emerging chain and helping it grow. Obviously, these emerging chains see the potential that you bring into those companies. And I'm wondering about that because, what you learned at Papa John's, what do you feel like you brought with you into Capriotti's and Wing Zone? And then what did you bring with you into Mooyah that you could use as a leader at these companies?
Yeah, I mean, so it starts with the pride for the brand. I mean, so one of the things that the similarities between all these companies is the people were very proud to work there, and so you can't fake genuine. So when you're wearing the shield around town, people are going to ask you about it. So the first thing really is the culture of the business, and so from there you grow from there. And so obviously at Papa John's we grew to where we had kind of a tried and true method. The other ones we were kind of building it, and that part's been super fun too. But for me it's all about the bones, and so when the core is right and you're growing the right way with the right process and the right follow-up and the right people, man, it makes things a whole lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's get into Mooyah because you've been now in this position for just a couple of months. You're relatively new to this role. Curious about your perspective of Mooyah as a brand before you got this job, because again, you mentioned you're not really looking for these jobs, not expecting them, but this opportunity comes across your table and you take a look at this brand. What do you see?
Yeah, so I mean, I was a customer, so I was familiar. But I had probably a much different mindset than most. As I went along in the process, I was looking for a reason to step aside. So almost like I'm interviewing to find a reason to stop the interview so I can go do my day job. And the more research I did, the more intrigued I was with the brand. The more interviews I had with the people here, the more intrigued I was for the brand. So it kind of went the other way. Every step that I took, I got closer and closer and closer to realizing that this was a really good match for me. And again, we're going to start with that, call it good people. So here, we're a smaller brand, but there's some tenured folks here, from our franchisees and also our team members. Call them the Moo Crew. And that genuineness came out. I mean, it's almost like when I was interviewing with them, they were interviewing me, to make sure I was a fit. And I found that to be bold, but also very intriguing. Like they were very protective of what we've built here, their brand. They wanted to make sure that I was going to come in and build from it, that they had a really good foundation here. And so that part was super intriguing, just to know that we had a lot of pride already within the brand. And so then, of course, all the other things, I wanted to make sure that we had, product that was craveable that we could be proud to sell. That's obviously the core. Then it was the health of the brand. Does our model work when executed? And the answer was yes. And then, of course, the fourth one being, we have tremendous white space. And so, there's not a lot of brands where you can pick the top-notch trade areas in markets and go there. Here, because we're emerging, we have that. So you kind of check all those four boxes, and it seemed like a really good fit for me that just happened to be 25 minutes from where I live.
Hey, that works out pretty good.
Yep. And after traveling for 20 years, that was pretty attractive.
I'm sure. Yeah, I know how that goes. All right. So then what did you think of the potential? Because you mentioned the white space from Mooyah. So, you come in, obviously, I'm sure the, existing leaders, board, all the people who have the stakeholders of this brand have a plan for it. But what did you see as being the potential for Mooyah when you came into this role?
So growing correctly, but also starting with what we have. So, do we have a base here? Is our core correct? Who are our franchise partners? So, my first 3 weeks was very structured. The first week was literally getting to know everybody on the support side. So one-on-one with everybody in the building. Let's get to know one another. Tell me what you do. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. Institutional knowledge is super important to me. Why would I not want to listen to people that have kind of been down the road? My second week was in the restaurant. So I tried my best not to talk to too many partners until I got behind the counter. I wanted to know how to ring up an order. I wanted to know how to prep and make burgers and build them and service our guests. I wanted to have that knowledge because you can't fool franchise partners. They're too smart. So I knew how to run a restaurant, but I didn't know how to run Mooyah. So I met everybody. Then I learned kind of like the same training that a franchisee would go to. And then since then, I've just been meeting partners. As many of them as I can. I'm going to meet all of them. I think I have like 5 left. But literally listening to them where I could get to them live, I would. If not, calls like this, my goal is to get with every single partner and then see where the patterns are and where the brand is.
Well, and to take a step back too, I mean, Mooyah exists in this better burger category that is pretty mature by now, just in that, call it 12, 13 years ago, I think Better Burger was buzzy because it was still kind of coming up. But now we've gotten to a point where I think customers are pretty familiar with the Better Burger category. They understand that a brand like Mooyah is going to give them something a little bit better than your typical QSR. But burger, too, with QSR especially, burger is relatively saturated. I'm curious how you see Mooyah's place in Better Burgers and Better Burgers as a whole, how this industry can kind of move forward and continue to take market share within the burger category.
Yes, I mean, you can get a burger anywhere, and
Yeah.
so you have to differentiate. And so for us, we found, and look what's out there. The brands that are really successful, they don't do a lot of things. They do a few things very, very well. And we have that same mold. We are burgers, fries, and shakes, and we do some things in there that we're very proud of. I mean, we have certified Angus beef on the burger side. So we have we have among the best that we're serving there. But then also we have in-house buns. Not many people know that. I mean, there's only a couple of brands that are doing this, and we're literally baking our buns every single day. So the fact that you can't get that anywhere else, I think that's a huge competitive advantage for us. We're hand cutting our fries inside the restaurant. Our shakes are real ice cream shakes. So our core is very, very, very solid on what we serve. And so that's going to help break through. But then you're only as good as the service. One of the things that I was so glad to see. I mean, our scores are off the charts. I mean, we're a full point above the industry right now across the board. So the franchisees out there are doing a great job executing, what we're all about.
Yeah. All right. So leaning into a couple of the sort of strengths that you've brought with you through your career to Mooyah and how you're going to apply them at Mooyah. I'm starting with kind of operational efficiency, operational innovation, and your experience there. I know Mooyah is pushing towards smaller build outs. I know it's adapting more drive through. As you come into this brand, what are some priorities from an operations standpoint that you see as being key to Mooyah's future?
Yeah, so when it looked like I was gonna, jump on board here, and I was doing lots of restaurant visits, and fortunately in DFW we have a lot of restaurants here, so I had over 20 visits just seeing what was out there. Are we consistent from restaurant to restaurant? And I was surprised in a good way. We had a lot of things right. Now, with that said, you still have to consistently perform the Mooyah way. And so is our sear correct? Are our buns, there's nothing easy about making your own buns. From proofing it correctly to baking them correctly to cutting them correctly. You'd be surprised how hard it is to cut buns. It's not easy. And so just is our product consistent from restaurant to restaurant? So I wanted to make sure that we started there. And even though our foundation was really, really strong, we had some opportunity there for sure.
Yeah. All right, then thinking about the experience and providing a great guest experience, you mentioned that service and how your scores are off the charts and you have this great model for providing great service. Tell me about that aspect of Mooyah, especially, I mean, as we move into this future where AI is kind of powering more and more things, labor's really tight today. How do you continue to ensure a great experience and, a great guest service product, so to speak?
Yes, that starts with great, franchise selection. So, franchisees that understand, hey, you've got to run this business correctly. They're going to start with good management teams, and good management teams are going to hire well-trained staffs, and they're going to execute that. But even still, that's just words. And so I was amazed going from restaurant to restaurant. It's little things. You walk in, you see a clean door, you open the door, and you get greeted right from the start. You're not waiting around, and the product comes out as quickly as we can do it. It's accurate, it's friendly, and it's hot and awesome. That's how you build it. And so that sounds super simple, but it's not easy to execute. And here, franchise partners and the ones we own, they do a really good job of owning the fundamentals. Fundamentally, we're very strong.
Yeah. And when you think about growth, going back to the franchise partners, is there an active push to recruit more franchisees, or do you want to kind of stay where you're at today?
Oh no, we're in hyper growth. And so there's two schools of thought there. Number one, I think the greatest thing for a brand is when our current franchisees are growing. And so, half our growth should come from our current partners. And so when they're very, very satisfied with their returns, they're satisfied with where the direction of the company is going, you're going to have our own franchisees growing. And then you sprinkle in the right ones in the right places doing the right things. And, I think that's the best way to grow a brand. So that's the way we're going at it. So
yeah, you mentioned that you're meeting a lot of the franchisees. You have a few left to go, but as you meet all of the franchisees, what are you hearing from them about their priorities for their business, their challenges they're facing today?
Yeah, so that part was It's my favorite part for sure. And it's almost like a filibuster. I'm going to sit in front of a partner and I kind of answer questions until there aren't any questions anymore. I think that one of the things that we bring from a leadership team and also support is we bring accessibility. So for me, that's one of our non-negotiables, that if the restaurants are open, so are we. And so our partners can get me 7 days a week. And so I think that part, just setting that, kind of that tone on, hey, we're here to partner with you. So we're going to listen to you. And so for me, that's what this has been about. It's literally sitting in front of our partners, seeing what's working and what's not. And I was very impressed by the engagement, the acumen, but also the transparency. I mean, right out of the gates, they told me it was right and they told me what wasn't. And that helps shape our work going forward. And so the listening tours have been exceed expectations on a very high level.
That's great. Shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about labor specifically, because just thinking about, again, I mentioned, all the headwinds today, labor being one of the big challenges that restaurants are facing, just not a very deep talent pool out there right now. Everybody wrestling with how AI can kind of come in and support. If we took a step back and look at your career, this is very much a great representation of what restaurants can be. That you started as a teenager, started for gas money, and then you found yourself with a 30-year career in this industry, and you're the president of a major chain now. That is something I think restaurants are trying to tell the story of. They're trying to communicate to more young people like, hey, you don't just have to do this for gas money. There is opportunity here. From a Mooyah perspective, but also broadly from just a restaurant leader perspective, how do you see that role that restaurants can play in hiring and retaining millions of Americans in this industry and providing an opportunity like you were provided?
Yeah. And so the first thing is, we have a lot of first jobs, but for us, the math says they probably won't stay with us. We want them to. I want people to grow up and become a manager, and they're an area person, and then a marketing lead, and then my job. That's the goal that we want. But if they're going to leave, we want them to have some skills here. And it's amazing what happens in a restaurant that carries on no matter what business you go into. So, I mean, restaurant people, when you talk about executing a high volume restaurant, if you can do that, you can execute almost any business. So I think that's the way we look at it in our development is, hey, yeah, some of our team members may not make it here, but what are they going to learn here from hard work, plans, execution, process, customer service? These things translate no matter what job you're going to take. Now, if this is your career, and Papa John's was so great for this, when I left, it was 30 years. I made it to 30 years. I wasn't alone. We had lots of people that had been there 20 years. We had lots of people that had started off at the store level and were running 100 restaurants or became franchisees. And that's what team members see. So you see a lot of people that started off making minimum wage, and now all of a sudden they've made a career out of this. That speaks volumes about the company.
I know a lot of companies really lean into their culture as a way to build on, being able to improve their retention, improve their recruitment. What is the Mooyah culture as you've come into it? How do you see that culture being? What do you feel like you could provide for that culture?
Yeah, one of our values is bussing tables. And so that's when I was looking at it, I love that, because where I was raised and I had tremendous mentors over the years. I mean, so many people that taught me how to do it. They all had a common denominator, and that's that leaders should be above nothing. And so I believe in servant leadership. I believe in, washing windows, cleaning bathrooms, sweeping floors, whatever needs to get done. And so I think that kind of mentality of, hey, we do what needs to be done just because that's who we are, I think that permeates throughout the whole business. So when I think our guests see, clean bathroom, or they see leadership doing this, that's how we're preparing our food as well. So I think it's something you can't fake, and it really is a mindset. And here, that's what we're about. We really are about the food that we serve, and how we do it, and we take a lot of pride in it, and It shows.
Mm-hmm. Labor, obviously, a headwind, as I mentioned. What are other headwinds? I imagine beef prices right now aren't your favorite thing in the world. What do you see as being some of the bigger challenges?
All-time highs. We like that in sales, not so much in cost.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but it's cyclical, and we're battling through it. But it's something for us, to where one of the first things I wanted to do was get the financials and, figure out how we can 5% in the P&L. And that's anywhere, whether it's raising sales, whether it's lowering costs, being more efficient with, our national partnerships with, whether it's pest control, just being really in tune with the P&L. And we're on our way, because those things are going to come and go. It's just part of the restaurant business, but ultimately it's sales driven. So I always want our number one focus to be on sales.
Yeah.
That's how much money's in the checking account.
And what are some reasons for hope you might have? Because I mean, if I think about like the last 5 years, of course, we went through what we went through in 20 through 22, but it just feels like every year post COVID, we've said, this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year. And then we get in the middle of a year and we're like, oh, wow, this is hard. This is a really tough year for restaurants. What are some signs of hope? What are some reasons to be optimistic in the Mooyah business?
So, I mean, our AUVs are very strong. Our growth is very, very strong. But I also love just kind of the way we do things. So I see opportunity in everything you just mentioned because, the companies that stay true and are very fundamental, they're going to make it through those kind of tougher times. And so for us, we're very grounded here. And so, yeah, we're gonna ebb and flow, and we're gonna have tough times, and it's not easy out there. The restaurant business is not easy anywhere. But because we're so fundamental and focused on our core, I just like our chances compared to a lot of the other places.
All right, Michael, last question for you. I'm curious about your advice for other leaders coming up in this industry who maybe have many years under their belt or maybe just see themselves staying in this industry for a long time. Being with 4 brands now and being able to grow as a leader and now apply all of those lessons to this role you have as president. What is your advice to other upcoming leaders in this restaurant industry and what they should make sure they can do if they aspire to leadership roles like you've been able to have?
I mean, I think that, that listen is the number one thing. Trust has to be earned. I have to earn yours and you have to earn mine. And I think the best thing we can give the people we work with is our time. And so being accessible, really listening, genuinely listening to your partners, is a big one. And then the trust is earned in the action. So, we just had our franchise advisory council in town. So we had our first live FAC meeting. And Sam, I got to tell you, I mean, I was impressed before I'd known everyone in the room from my meetings, but just to see this group together, that to me would be my advice to anyone getting into this. Get the experts around you. Listen to what they have to say, and then make your actions based upon most important work on what's really needed for the business.
Yeah, it's great advice.
Still works.
Still works. Never going to go out of fashion, right? All right. Michael Meche, president of Mooyah. I really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
Hey, Sam. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
That was my interview with Mooyah president Michael Meche. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 5 takeaways. My first takeaway is that if you don't know how to run a restaurant, it's hard to do anything else. The point Michael was trying to make when he essentially said exactly that was, you cannot run your restaurants from some ivory tower, from behind a desk. Even if you have a massive chain that you are overseeing, you have to understand how the restaurant runs. Michael is obviously a firm believer in great operations, and you cannot do great operations from behind a computer. You have to get into the restaurant and understand every facet of how that restaurant runs, no matter if you're in franchisee growth, if you're in marketing, if you're a store manager, if you are the brand founder, whatever role you're playing. You should understand the intricacies of running your restaurant because then you can't do much of anything else. The point here, especially too, from Michael, is that as he oversees franchise growth and his main mandate is to take care of franchisees, he's asking them to run great operations, and he cannot do that if he doesn't know how to run a great operation himself. So it's a great point to remember that if you don't know how to run the restaurant, you don't know how to do much of anything else. So do yourself a favor and go understand how to run the restaurant. My second takeaway is that no matter how fast you scale, don't forget to grow one restaurant at a time. Michael got to see incredible growth at Papa John's when he was there. As he said, he started when they only had, a very small number of restaurants and then was there until they grew to like 1,700. He saw this massive growth over 20 plus years spent at Papa John's. But as he got into franchisee support, franchise growth, he understood that you're only as good as your next restaurant, and you have to focus on every single restaurant at a time as you grow. Don't get lost in the numbers of how big you could grow. Don't get lost in the leases signed, the deals in the pipeline. Focus on every restaurant as it opens. Get in there, make sure it's successful, and then move on to the next one. If you lose sight of what's important, that on the ground in the restaurant success, the wheels could come off and you just might not really know what true success actually means. My third takeaway is that great operations are what help you beat the restaurant across the street. So the point Michael here was making is that if you take marketing out of it, because you have these massive chains with huge marketing budgets, and that can make a real difference when it comes to succeeding against your competitor. But at the end of the day, when you're competing against the restaurant across the street for that local customer, it's the great operations that make a huge difference. The point is that if you give the customer a great experience when they come in, however they come in, if they saw your marketing or if they just heard you opened, if you give them a great experience through great operations, then they're going to want to come back. And that's how you take that business away from the restaurant across the street. I love this line that Michael said, which was, he said, the franchisee has to be the mayor of that town. So as Mooyah is growing now, and as they are really ramping up franchise growth and selecting franchisees, Michael's expectation is that that franchisee for that store is ensuring that everything is in proper order, is in the restaurant, knowing exactly how things should be run, running a tight ship. Because if the franchisee, if he or she can do that, then they're going to be able to beat that competitor across the street. And Mooyah has a lot of competitors across the street in the burger space. So keep that in mind, that great operations really set you apart from the pack at that granular street level perspective. My fourth takeaway is that you should equip your employees with lifelong skills. Now, by the way, this is equipping them with those lifelong skills, even if they don't use those skills in your restaurant. Michael is a lot like Rick Cardenas, who I recently interviewed from Darden. Very similar in that he's this lifelong restaurant guy. He's been in since he was a teenager. And he has obviously built this very successful, fruitful career for himself. And not every teenager coming into the restaurant is obviously going to do that. And they might not want to do that. And that's fine. But Michael made the point that, you have to empower your employees, teach them, invest in them with the expectation that they might build a career even in your company. And if you do that and they do stick around in your company, you get to enjoy the benefits of that, right? You get to have a leader in the pipeline who you get to watch grow into somebody that Michael has become. But even if they don't, you have set them up for success in their career. Not only is that the right thing to do, but again, the odds are that somehow that will come back to benefit your company. And you should always, always, always focus on those team members, especially your young team members. How can you invest in them, give them lifelong skills, and make them the best person that they can be? My fifth and final takeaway is that the most important thing that you can give your team is your time. I wholeheartedly support this idea, which is that, Michael says right now he's meeting all the franchisees. He's only a few months into the job, but he's meeting all the partners, franchise partners. He's meeting all the employees. And that gift to them of his time is important because he's listening to them. He's hearing them out, getting to know them. And by doing that, as he said, he builds trust. And trust is that really, really, really the most important thing here that you can build with your team. If you don't listen to your team, if you don't make an effort with them and you don't have that trust, they're not going to follow you wherever you want to go. And as a leader, you have to be able to lead them to the places that can be successful. So take time, listen to your employees, give them that gift of your time, and it will come back again to benefit you personally and your business. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again and talk to you next week.
55% of Gen Z and millennials say social media reviews are the top reason they try a restaurant. And 73% have visited a restaurant in the last 3 months because of one. Do you have timely reviews working for you? Quick-turn influencer review campaigns from Bell Communication can fill tables fast. Visit bellcommunication.com/influence to learn more.